Welcome to another episode of The Wireless Way. And man, as always, I'm grateful for you. But if you haven't noticed a trend, I only bring on people that I'm grateful for to have in my life. So I'm, again, grateful for my guest today, Bryce Hayes. He's a seasoned global operations executive with more than 30 years of experience scaling enterprise operations and customer delivery around the world. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And I'm grateful he's here with us today. Bryce and I had the opportunity of actually working together in the past at a TSD where I saw firsthand his ability to drive efficiency, performance, and growth through smart integration, operational transformations, a lot of that, and technology innovations. So he's widely recognized for aligning people, processes, and technology to deliver superior outcomes and accelerate business results. He brings a deep expertise in business processes, as I mentioned, for outsourcing contacts, P&L leadership, M&A integration, and building high-performing teams. A trusted advisor to C-suite leaders, he's known for delivering predictable, high-quality results while helping organizations grow and scale with confidence. I don't think any of that's an exaggeration, Bryce. Man, thanks for being here. Is that you? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, you've hit the high points. You make it sound really glossy when the reality is behind the scenes in operations. It's always a little chaotic, but I very much appreciate the introduction and excited to be with you.
Yeah, that analogy of the goose, of the swan, gracefully going across the water, but you're paddling like heck under the water. No one sees that. Yeah, and as I was sharing with you, I've known you for years. Always had tremendous respect with our work with you in really two different capacities, as a colleague and as a supplier. In the TSD space, and you stand up guy, straight shooter. Ask you for advice, you gave it to me, and I always appreciated that. But as was always the case on the wireless way, we all have our professional bio. We have what people know about us. What's not in the bio? Is anything else you could share with us? About that we probably should know or would like to know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know me from the channel community, but it really goes back to honestly the Sears catalog. And so when I was in college, I was just trying to pay my way through and make things work and survive. And I took a job at a call center that you remember those Sears catalogs that were,
Oh yeah.
12 inches thick. I was one of those guys on the other end, again, just taking those phone calls. So I started as a call center agent. And after about 3 months, I got a phone call and they said, "Hey, we like what you're doing. Would you be interested in helping us to do quality monitoring?" And did that for a little while. And then they said, "Well, how would you like to train?" I'm like, "Okay, let's try that for a while." "Well, what would you think about running this team?" "Sure, let's give it a shot." And next thing you know is that throughout that career, I'd always anticipated that I was going to go and maybe be an attorney or, do something with my life. And I, like most of you probably listening to this call, I fell into telecom and I never got out. And part of it was because I loved it. And really what it was is it gave me the opportunity I found I really enjoyed talking to the folks on the other end of the phone. I always liked the conversations. And so starting as a call center agent and really going up and actually leading global call centers. I've done that in a couple of different occasions. And then, of course, joined a TSD where I think, my most recent experience has been. What, again, I don't know that people know about my background is I have done all of those roles. And as a result of doing that, from running call centers to building call centers to shutting call centers down because people were moving to software and technology and moving into AI, it's been this evolution that most of us have been on in our careers. And I think what's been really fascinating is there's just so many unique ways and new changes that have come into play to do things better. So what you may not always see when in the resume is you might see, well, guy who leads ops teams or he does these things. It is always evolving to solve oftentimes the same problems or to respond to technology or to do all of those things. And I look at my career more as has been just this giant puzzle that the picture keeps changing, 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 changing. And that's really what operations is to be able to go and figure out what does the world require in regards to a company's response? What does it require in terms of being able to support a product? What does it require in terms of just doing what, again, that company does? And that's what my career has been is I'm a problem solver.
Speaking of problems, looking back over the last decade or so, the channel is changing a lot. TSDs are changing a lot. The workflow is getting more complex. It used to be, give me your bill, I'll save you 30%. I'll get your address, we'll get you another provider, get it installed, pay the bill, and commissions flow. You see, it was kind of a predictable, easier route, but now with advanced technology, there's so many different new suppliers, there's new partners. What are you seeing as like some of the hardest challenges that TSDs are facing, as the partner ecosystem is continued to evolve and become a little more complex?
So let's start with the more fun part of that equation, which is what's happening with the advisor community. And the reality is the trusted advisor model just continues to explode. And I'm convinced more and more and more. I mean, everybody talks about how this is the model of the future. It's the model of the now, and it's just going to
Mhm.
get bigger in the future. Because I think companies have figured out, like everybody else, is that I should pay for success. I should pay ultimately on results. And advisors are incredibly well positioned to do that. And that value proposition, that changing from, hey, I can save you 30% into now having to come new ways to, or cover new ways to express that value, that's part of the complexity. So when you used to go back and sell a network circuit for $100, you knew very predictably what you were going to get month over month over month. Now you've got advisors that are selling AI solutions, cloud solutions, usage based products. And as a result of that, all the math has changed. You don't even know how much usage you had this month versus last month. Again, I think a lot of people make assumptions, and including advisors of the TSDs, that there's things they could see that they can't see. Oftentimes, this relationship at the end of it all is a contractual relationship between a supplier and ultimately a customer. And so I think the challenges that exist are really tied to one is just general transparency. How clear can you make all of this? You also have challenges with the way that technology is changing every time any player in this ecosystem makes a change. So that could be the supplier, it could be the TSD, it could be the agent, it could be the customer. The repercussions are real. And so you change one piece of software in the supplier payment system, and everybody has to change the dance steps. You go back through, and an advisor again changes. This is how we're going to submit our orders, or we want to integrate with this, or we want to do this. Again, there is this alignment that exists that is bigger than just the four parties in it. It's always been, again, something that's really substantial and a whole lot wider. So the challenges, of course, that exist are you have to find a way, which I just talked about of what I've had to do in my career, is that if a TSD was built to support network, that's not how you support mobility. That's not how you support AI and cloud. That's not how you support UCAS and CCAS. Again, each of those things almost has turned into their own division, if you will. The sales motion is different. Don't expect the operations movement to be any different. Don't expect the supplier support to be any different. All of those things have to shift. And in order for these things to really work in concert, again, it's really, I think, taking all of those elements, taking everything that people do, and then just getting it as smooth and frictionless as possible. So the challenge is, again, very frequent changes. The challenges are a lot of suppliers now coming to the party. The challenges are a lot of existing suppliers having to change and ultimately evolve to be better. A lot of advisors improving their skill set, going up market, selling more things. All of those things just change the response and how things work. People want to move fast. People want to move accurately. People want to do what they can to, again, get this payment. At the end of it all, when you talk about the supplier, the advisor, and the TSD, we all want to get paid. That coordination is much more complex than perhaps people think about.
I agree with you. As you were talking about getting paid, having been doing this for a while, selling the deals is great. Going to the dinners is great. Going, even to Vegas, we were talking about a little bit earlier, it has its moments. But the one thing we all dread is that one phone call for that commission dispute. Why is my commission not right? Why do I not get, I mean, those get so, that's emotional. I mean, that's their livelihood. That's could be their mortgage, child's, call it whatever. Bottom line, it's money, their partner has earned and sold a deal. Going back to processes and, if you skip processes or things aren't tagged correctly or expectations weren't set properly, based on, it was 100 SIMs, but only 30 of them activated. You can't get paid on 100 SIMs because there's only 30 of them in use. Did you even know that yet? So I try to talk to partners a lot. I mean, I feel like it's just not scientific. Half the time it was a mistake on the partner side, at least, just because they didn't know, or it's a technology they haven't sold before, so they didn't understand how it worked. Yeah, so definitely it's complex because
Yeah.
the main reason they're selling the service is to make money. And if that is messed with, they're like, I don't know if I want to do that again, at least not with that person or that company.
Yeah. If you were to ask me if it was a utopia, if this was a dream scenario, what would I wish for? And that is that I wish that everybody knew what everybody thought they think that they knew. So
That's
I find
cool.
again that suppliers, they may have had a conversation with the advisor the TSD doesn't know about. Maybe the advisor had a conversation with the TSD the supplier knows about. Maybe somebody told the customer something that was complete fabrication. I think the reality of all of this is that there's nobody out there that I have worked with, except in very rare circumstances, that isn't trying to do the right thing, isn't trying
Right.
to jump through the right hoops, isn't trying to do those things. The frustration that exists, and it's real, and I think it's something that has to be attention to or paid attention to, is usually tied to, again, what don't people understand? And that was what was always really unique for me about whenever I would talk to an advisor about commission, is that I look at commissions, think of it almost like this. There can be, I have a question about my commission. That's one thing. Do you actually have a real problem with your commission? It's an entire other thing. And until you answer that question and until you have really provide visibility into what it is and why, it's hard to know. If you think about, again, all of those things, and I don't want to get too distracted within
Sure.
commission, but think about where all of the problems can happen. A supplier could tag it wrong. The TSD might put in the wrong address. The advisor might have given the wrong date. There's 100 reasons why something could go wrong. The customer may not ever have activated their service. So there's reasons why things like that happen. And it's a frustration that exists of having to go back and get answers to those questions. But what I have found in most cases is that there was usually an answer. There was usually a good attempt to make things work, and it was usually administrative, it could be clerical, but the errors happen from all of the parties. And I think that puts the TSDs in a unique position is that's what advisors ultimately pay for. Go fight for me. Go to war. Go and help to get those things done. But whether it's commissions or whether it's an operations order or whether it's a contract or what those things are, and I would sometimes hear things like, well, I pitted two TSDs against each other and I gave these guys this contract and I gave these guys this contract and these guys got it faster, so they must have a better process. If you're making a decision based off a one-time thing, good luck. That doesn't mean anything. You also don't necessarily know, well, what resources did the TSD have to go and actually get that information? So I've seen examples where, again, if you're an advisor, you just want the dang thing to work. You just want speed. You want to be able to move as fast as you can because this stuff is the frustration. The administration part's the frustrating part about all of it. But what I would usually find is, again, that there are processes, there are things that you need to go through. You try to set the right expectations. But every once in a while, somebody's a superhero and they get something done. Congrats, but are they going to be able to do that every time? The answer is no, that's not scalable. Are they going to be able to provide something consistently, fully, if they've built the right process? And that's where you really hope that you didn't hire Superman because he's got a lot of emergencies to go solve.
Yeah, he does. Speaking of going back to that supplier process, onboarding suppliers. Let's talk about that for a minute, kind of pivot a little bit. Collaborating with suppliers, what advice would you have for TSD operations leaders or TSDs in general and suppliers in general? What's some best practices to try to ensure that it works and the partner ultimately gets paid? I mean, what advice or best practice have you seen there and has that changed much over the years? Is it what was true 10 years ago? Is it true today, or how's that evolving?
Well, the biggest thing that's changed is that you have more than 10x to the number of suppliers from a decade ago from almost every TSD. So again, you're asking a question that probably feels like, look, what are we doing to get suppliers and get them into the system? But you've added so many, and there are so many more coming, and there are so many additional technologies. Everybody wants to be in the channel.
Mhm.
That's half the conversations I have these days. How do I get in the channel? How do I, become a part of this? I'm a fan of the Harry Potter books, and so every once in a while, I reread a few of them over Christmas. And there's one particular book where they're sitting in the hall, and they sing the school song. And the way you sing the school song is everybody knows the words, but everybody picks their own tune. And so you can imagine, and the way that she describes that particular scene is that everybody's singing, and at the end, there's only two guys singing, and they're singing the school song to a funeral march. Everybody sang the same words. Everybody participated in the same thing. They all sang a different tune. And so it's cliche to say get everybody on the same sheet of music. But I think the reality is that everybody kind of speaks a very similar language. They use the same words. They talk about a sales pipeline. And yet, when you go back into that, you all of a sudden find that people have different definitions of what that pipeline is. When you sell network, for example, the entire process to get you a quote and to get that thing installed can often be done in 45 days. And yet, if you're selling something that is very complex, maybe it's cloud driven, maybe it's AI, where you have to go and spend 3 months doing scoping, those things might take 6 to 9 months. And so I think the challenge that every TSD has is how do you get that supplier onboarded and how are you certain that everybody is singing the same song? How are you certain that the language they use, that the expectations that they set at the suppliers? And keep in mind, these suppliers, they have their own patterns, they have the way they work, they have what they do. The TSD is then trying to broker that opportunity. They have to figure out how to work within that system. So years ago, within a particular TSD, I remember that there was an experiment where we were trying to go back and figure out, all right, if I'm talking to Comcast or if I'm talking to AT&T, let's do a comparison of what they call these things and how long they take. So when they say something like contract, what happens in the contract phase? When they talk about install, what happens in the install phase? And you go back and you get into detail in those systems and you find things like they have all sorts of breakdowns, like, truck roll, or they showed up and they had to escalate it. They have hundreds of little dispositions behind the scenes that you go back and you're trying to make work. So the challenge ultimately of onboarding a new supplier is to make sure, first and foremost, yeah, everybody has to understand the product. That's the easiest part of all of this is what these guys do, and this is what we should be selling. How do you then figure out your sales team? How do they go talk about it? What is it that they're advocating? Your marketing team. What is it you're going to teach the advisors and tell people, and what are you going to communicate? Your operations team. How are they going to get into the platforms? How do they work through the systems? How do they submit things the right way? The most critical thing the TSD can do is to get all of these things and all of these three groups, go to market teams, if you will. You got to get them on the same page. I tell this to suppliers all the time. If you are only talking to the salespeople, good luck. If you're only talking to the operations people, good luck. If you're only sponsoring marketing events, good luck. There is no strategy that ultimately results in growth that does not have the all three legs of the three-legged stool, sales, ops, marketing, coming together to then figure out how you then onboard that supplier. And I think the challenge is with the added complexity, with the things that you do, you've got to take hundreds of potential people, bring them into the orchestra, give them their sheet music, show them their part, have them do what they do. I know it's cliche, but you got to get everybody singing on the same sheet of music. And when you have now 500 plus suppliers that can exist in a portfolio, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, then you've got to go back through and change what changed, what evolved, what was it that shifted, what new promotions came up, what this, what that. It's a really complicated dance and far harder than perhaps people think. I believe that a lot of times, if I hear feedback sometimes, and this is slightly off topic of the question, I hear so much judgment about performance, both good and bad, that is tied to what somebody saw 6 months ago, 9 months ago, 12 months ago. If you're not talking within the last couple of weeks, it's almost irrelevant. And that sounds a little crazy, but it's moving that fast.
Wow, that is daunting. What value do you see the TSCs providing to suppliers other than a route to market? What else is the TSDs doing to help suppliers?
I think a lot of it comes down to how well you do what I just said, which is
Yeah.
again, if the supplier is engaging the TSD, sales, ops, marketing, and if the TSD is responding with sales, ops, marketing, that is ultimately going to be far more successful than again running an event in one particular small part of the world. It doesn't mean that those things don't matter. It all matters. I mean, please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to minimize any of this. Sales has an incredibly hard job. I admire it. Ops has a hard job. I admire it. Marketing, hard job. I think really when you talk about what can the TSD do, the TSDs, I have information where they know what's working in particular regions. They know operationally, for example, what is coming in, what people are asking for. They have data where they're trying to help to work out conversion rates. I've set through enough QBRs, and this is even pre TSD, where every QBR you have an opportunity to get together and talk about what works. When you kind of walk through that pipeline, then you're asking, okay, what are you ingesting? How are you receiving it? What could we improve? How are you spitting out what's required? How are you getting all these things back? I think the TSD can bring a lot of value. It's not just putting people in front of advisors, it's putting them in front of the right advisors, putting them into an environment where the right conversation can occur. And I think sales teams across TSDs are brilliant at this. I think they're much better than people think. But you know how hard it is to get advisors sometimes to go to events? Because they think they know. I have kind of a running joke that I used to talk about the advisor community. Advisors can do something that most people can't do, and something that I personally probably am not great at. They can charge halfway up the mountain and get halfway up there and have these conversations, and they're excited. They get halfway up, and then they realize they don't have what they need. The TSDs have to literally be prepared to jump in and supplement. First of all, think about every type of advisor. You got a guy in his garage, and you've got people in office buildings in Manhattan with 200 employees. The TSD has to support every agent the way they want to be supported. They have to supplement every agent with, again, not just the supplier skill set, but the education skill set, process skill set. All of those things are required. So when you ask how a TSD can help a supplier, the TSD can again help you understand how to work their infrastructure and their organization. They can teach you how to use the tools to get into the right places. They can introduce you to the right individuals to generate the right conversations. They can facilitate instances to create engagement. They can provide data working with you to help you know what's weak and what's strong. The challenge is whether or not the number of QBRs I've set through where everybody sings kumbaya, you have, a couple $100 dinner, and then everybody goes their own way and doesn't do anything about it. Those outnumber the ones that people actually respond to and do something about, probably 10 to 1. So my hope would be is that if you're going to go and have those conversations, I hope you're doing something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Set the expectation. What next? What did the last 2 hour QBR? What's the takeaway? What's the action steps? What are we going to do? I agree with you. I think I could agree with that strongly. And I tell you, it's even where I'm at in my career now. I mean, I was kind of like, hey, I it's not my most favorite thing to do. Digging into reports and all. But if we're going to do it, what's my ROI? I mean, are we actually going to move the needle now? I mean, what's next? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
you talk about scale, and one of the things I already kind of talked about the whole Superman thing is that look,
Yeah.
it's great that you might have an employee or you might have access to somebody who can go and work miracles. But again, that stuff doesn't scale, and what do you do when that person's not there anymore? The ideal scenario is that whatever it is that you've built, and in whatever relationship that is, everybody, the advisor wants to sell, the supplier wants to sell, the TSDs want to sell, and it is up to them to come together to create, again, the right dance that everybody knows and how to respond to make it work. Now, it doesn't mean that you get over bent. You don't get too bent out of shape, if you will, when there's something that doesn't go right, because it's going to happen. You look at what actually occurs. I used to have this thing, I used to call it the river report. Imagine you put an inner tube in the river, and you basically say, hey, you're going to get picked up by some friends. There are marker posts that you have a pretty good idea. Like your inner tube should make it down the river in 45 minutes, and the guy's going to pick you up. If after 45 minutes you don't show up, something is wrong. What have you done about it? Again, you should know what's supposed to happen in the process, what the outcome is supposed to be, so that you can take a look. But then also understand, I mean, I'd ask advisors to maybe give the TSDs a little bit of grace, because most of the time they're trying to answer the questions to things that they can't see. They're not in all of the supplier systems the same way the suppliers are in the same systems. I'd ask sometimes for the TSDs a little bit of grace on the agent side, because they don't feel the pressure that sometimes an agent might feel. I'd ask for ultimately the suppliers to go back and look at this and say, look, every deal matters, big or small, because this is the reputation, which is a cumulative effect that advisors have. I think it's important to look at the overall. I think it's important to look at how things are supposed to flow, and then constantly looking at how to improve what that looks like. Whatever the river is. Could you make it faster? Could you make it better? Could you make it more fun? Could it be a sunnier day? I think you can make all of that stuff and come up with whatever variables you want. But that is really what, again, is occurring in this dance, is that you've got a great product somewhere. You've got a brokered opportunity to get in and to sell that. You've got advisors who knock it out of the park. 99% of the time it works, and works really well. Don't get distracted by the 1%, but figure out how to make that stuff better. And how then do you help each group to then improve their individual action? Like I've had conversations with agents of, I can help you help yourself if you will learn how to use this portal. I can help you help yourself if you go learn how to do that. I've had agents tell me, hey, you could improve if you actually went and learned what this service is about. I've had to tell suppliers the same thing. There's always the opportunity for every group to improve how they perform, because every day it's a new variable. It's what I love about watching golf, is that everybody thinks it's the same kind of thing. The weather changes, the wind changes, the grass length is different. There's different equipment. We're kind of playing golf with technology, which is 100 times harder. Every single day, it's new. Every day.
Another great analogy. I love analogies. Another pivot, so I know in your current mission, your current journey you're on now, advising companies that want to get into the TSD, ecosystem. In your experience, would you say the profile of a supplier slash, solution provider, the profile, is there profiles that are really a great fit for the channel? And then profiles that are not a great fit for the channel. How would you explain that, or what's your thoughts there?
There are definitely supplier profiles that fit. And again, think of it as simple as this is ultimately a brokered relationship. How well can you broker this? You've already made the biggest jump that you can think of is you've gone from essentially network where you sign a contract and then you walk away and then the supplier goes and sells it. Now you've got things that might take, an engineer or somebody go show up on site for a couple months to go and then put these things into production. I think what it comes down to is ultimately what is the profiles that fit are you're working with a supplier that has appropriate channel rules. They know how it works. They know how the service fits in and why they would want the advisors to sell it. I believe the advisor community is just going to get bigger and more capable in things they do. I think there's technologies we're not even thinking about yet. They'll come to the channel simply because it works. So if I talk to a supplier, and trust me, every TSD goes through these rules. They're going to ask you things such as, do you have a portal? Do you have evergreen commission? Do you have a product that is actually sellable? You may very well have the best commission on the planet. You may have the best portal on the planet, and you get out there and just find out this isn't something I can sell, or this is not the traditional advisor community that we would go back through. There's not so much a profile as I think it really is. You have to really consolidate all of these things to make sure that the movement works. You've got to have the right people, the processes, and the technology. You've got to be engaged. You've got to be incredibly transparent. You've got to make sure that you're willing to take feedback. You're going to have to evolve how these things work. I mean, people always talk to me about what's it like to bring a new supplier into the channel. There are suppliers in the channel that I'd love to go and kick in the rear end and say, you need to evolve to the channel. You tell me you haven't seen this dance. You've seen suppliers that get in there. We're so excited about the channel. This is the best thing ever. They get a new executive, and all of a sudden, hey, we're not sure about this channel thing. 6 months later, they're on the apology tour. Hey, sorry, we screwed up. We want to come back to the channel. It's not just new suppliers, it's every supplier. You've got to, again, have the right rules, the right product, the right people, and then you got to stick to all this stuff. You got to make it work. But at the end, it's got to be something the advisors can go sell.
Yep. I've seen that for sure. And I hear a lot, oh, the channel's so complicated, so difficult and complex. Maybe I've been doing it so long like you. My mind, I'm like, no, if you boil it down, it's not. Just do what you say you're going to do and say what you're going to do and do it. Be responsive, have some integrity, have a plan. I mean, that seems like to me, a lot of us just kind of seems very basic, but again, that's not what I see, right? You look out there, I don't see that. I see the suppliers calling, going, "Hey, why aren't we getting more deals?" I'm like, "Yeah, who are you again?" I'm not, is this our first phone call? I mean, I've never even talked to you before. Yeah, so that's obviously everybody kind of owns that because I feel like, hey, I feel like my role currently, working with the TSD is like, I want to coach and mentor and help the supplier because I'm like, I'm your inside guy. This is what you're, and this is the relationship you're investing in, and a partnership. I learned from a mutual friend of ours, it's bi-directional. Both parties have to equally be trying to make it work. Signing up with a TSD is like buying a hunting license. Someone once told me. I thought that was a great analogy too. It's like, you still got to practice your rifle, your shooting, and you got to go buy all the camo and have a hunting leash. There's a lot of things you have to do if you're going to be a hunter. Buying the license does not mean you're going to have a freezer full of deer meat or something.
I tell this to suppliers that are curious about the channel is that look, it's amazing to be part of the TSD landscape, to get involved in the channel, because that does things. Again, it makes legal agreements that much easier. A company all of a sudden now has access to hundreds, thousands of advisors who can go out and sell their product. But if you are, again, you're not building your message for the TSD. You are building your message for the advisor community first and foremost. Everything you do still needs to be advisor driven. The TSDs, I can promise, when they come back and say you should do this, it's not because it's better for them. It's the TSDs that I know and I work with, and I've now worked with all of them in different forms and functions. But the reality is they're trying to make this an improvement to, again, attract advisors as well. I absolutely believe that in the channel, we would all be a whole heck of a lot better if we would stop making certain assumptions of what people think others know. Again, the things that suppliers know the TSDs don't know is through the roof. The things that the TSDs know the advisors don't know. It's always been about the communication. It's always about trying to help to educate why things work. Most of the time, again, it's just unmet expectations. It's a misunderstanding. of how things flow through the system. But we've been in this channel. Yeah, there have been occasionally a player that is maybe a little off base, but the reality is that most of the people I work with in the channel are trying to do this the right way. They're trying to do it with integrity. They're trying to again make these things happen, and that is on the supplier side, the TSD, and the agent side. We'd be much better off if we would just ask questions when we don't understand something, or if we have a frustration, try to figure out, hey, why is this occurring? Take the emotion out of it, and we can go from
Yeah.
there.
I don't know if this is a fair question, but I'm going to ask it and see where you go with it. But of all the problems that an operations leader in a TST would have, let's say the top 10 that consumes their time, is there one that you could fix? If you could fix this tomorrow, would have the most impact, and why?
It's all transparency. Everything is transparency. It's just being able to go back and ideally show people why 1 + 1 = 2. When I go back and again I look at the problems, if the frustrations come from unmet expectations, let's say, for example, and let's use examples from all of the phases of operations. You're frustrated because you can't get a quote back. Why couldn't that quote come back? It's because did the agent have a rate card at the TSD? Did they have something that they could look at, or did they have to email somebody and they're not getting a response? Again, there's transparency there where the agent's not going to know what the TSD may have to do to go and get that. They might not understand that the guy who is responsible for giving that quote all of a sudden is out sick this afternoon and you're not going to get it back for the next 24 hours. Again,
Right.
it's expectation setting. You can take that from an order. An order comes in and the advisor's like, hey, when am I going to get paid? And then you find out this darn thing hasn't even installed yet, or there's different challenges there. Again, it's transparency. On the commission side of the house, it's again, hey, are you sure that the customer paid their bill? Are you sure that when they paid their bill that they paid all of the bill? Are you sure that again all of these things that went done? If I could take all of the problems and boil them down operationally, the frustration that exists is that operations teams have to clear every hurdle. So let's be really honest about a couple of things. Whether the agent does it, the TSD does it, or the supplier does it, if you were talking about a business pipeline, certain things have to happen all the way through and they have to connect the dots. You can't put an installation in without a contract. You can't accelerate the installation without a contract. Once you have the installation, I can't make the customer pay their bill faster. I can't make the suppliers remit payment faster. I can't necessarily speed up at which even the TSDs can pay these things. I believe that the biggest challenges are simply, again, it's transparency and explaining why something is stuck the way that it is stuck and where it is stuck. And my challenge to anyone on any of the side, on the supplier side, the advisor side, the TSD side, the more you can enable those types of things and say, hey, if the expectation is 3 days, when it comes out at 3 days, what are you doing proactively to go say something about it? You can get ahead of so many of these problems just by creating better transparency, explanations as to why things are stuck or why things aren't the way they are. No one complains when the process works. No one complains when that inner tube shows up down the river the way you explained it to be. It's what do they say? What's the statistic? If you have a good experience, you might tell someone. If you had a bad experience, you tell 8 people. You don't
Right.
think that exists in the channel?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Internally, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on advice you would have for leaders within a TSC organization or even a supplier. I think this kind of goes across all. Operations, we're kind of talking pre-show operations. Sometimes, it gets bad rap, because again, you're trying to constantly fit the square peg in the round hole and no one realizes, that's not how it works. But somehow or another, you almost always do. It feels like the relationship between, departments. Have you seen, best practices there to kind of go back to, transparency, full disclosure, set expectations. Is there anything else that you could add to that organizations could just kind of have a smoother operational vibe?
Sure. Boy, I sound like a broken record, but it's
Yeah.
communication and transparency.
Hey, hey,
So
I like that
again,
petition.
well, think of it almost like this. If you're within the TSD, the sales team out there has to ultimately take the message they got from their supplier team and then has to make sure that operations is supporting what's now been promised, that marketing is, enhancing and helping to improve that the IT teams and tech teams have built and updated the platforms and the right solutions. Again, there's so many moving parts. But think about it even just from whether you're the supplier, the thing that's the most unique about the agents, and again, kind of forgive the slight deviation. A lot of times you'll have an agent, you'll have one person, and that one person is again now dealing with this giant bureaucracy. And this giant bureaucracy, it is almost in complete contrast to how agents work. Agents go and they hustle and they move and they shake and they create and they do these magical things. And then you've got these big companies and they have to put in their TPS report. or they have to go and have the installer go out, or they have to go and find this person. There's so many hoops and things that have to get jumped through. The TSD may have access to one particular supplier system, only to find out that said supplier system then funnels into 8 other systems at the supplier to again launch the install, to put the contract through legal, to get it to the commissions and the financial teams, to get all that stuff done. It's a miracle sometimes, that this stuff works. So when you ask me what people can do and what they should be aware of, is that the single best thing that any supplier and TSD can do is that they can again remove the friction, and they can make sure that their people can work hopefully in some form of harmony. That again, sales, operations, marketing, the best relationships I saw is, look, I know salespeople can be frustrated at ops, but let's be really honest, ops can be just as frustrated about sales. Like, hey, did
Mhm.
you guys just promise something that is complete BS? Did you just go out and tell somebody
Uh,
you were going to make something happen in 3 days when you know darn well you shouldn't have done it?
yeah.
Chris, every day I would get a phone call from somebody. I know you can do this if you just go try harder. You're right, I can. But this is the 10th time this week that I've gone and done this. At some point, the supplier is going to come and smack me upside the head and like, hey, we have processes for a reason. I love advisors and how they hustle and how they move. But again, the processes exist to get the bulk of these things through as best they can, and then they can deal with the exceptions and the things that come through. What I believe can ultimately happen is that what the supplier and the TSD can do is that they need to look at the friction that exists within their organization. They need to make sure that their handoffs are flawless. They need to make sure that if Tim hands it to Bob, that Bob gives a darn as much as the other guy did. They've got to make sure when this is going through the process that this doesn't just turn into a number and another report. There's got to be some emotion and some caring about it. Somebody then also ultimately has to own this thing, and they've got to make sure that they get that through. That's true of the suppliers. That's true of the TSDs. What I would wish could occur again within all of these groups is that, hey, we have an obligation. You signed a contract. Even if you just put a little bit of care behind it, a little bit of emotion, if you can add the transparency, you can provide the explanations, you can help to explain why things might go a little sideways. That's all really people are looking for. I have yet to meet an advisor that doesn't know darn well that the environment in which they work is chaotic and confusing. But what they expect is that a true ops professional is going to go and figure out how to unclog the sink. A true sales professional is going to go and figure out where to kind of put the right pressure and to kind of help those things work. The power of the TSD is, yes, it is process, it's technology, those are important, but the people work the magic because the people can take the things that fall outside of those things and get it back on track.
Another pivot in the conversation here. I've been doing a lot of episodes, a lot of conversations with how AI is impacting technology, how it's impacting the end user experience. If you had a crystal ball, I mean, where do you see us going, the TSD operational environment, in general? Do you see something like kind of short term, maybe long term, where how AI is going to make that partner experience better?
I know that I'm a little corny with the analogy, so you're just going to have to forgive me. People
I'm
that work
loving it,
for me,
man. I'm
they've
loving
had to
it.
deal, they've had to deal with me like this for a year. So if you're one of my former employees listening to this, you're like, okay, he's going off on a Bryce tangent. When I was a kid, 16, 17 years old, I worked for a pizza place, and at the time when you worked for the pizza place, you had 4 or 5 phones up front, and if you ever walked in, again, this is 30 years ago, if you walked into the pizza place, the phone was always ringing. Ring, 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 ring constantly. Over time, with the internet, think about it. The last time you ordered a pizza, I'll bet you that you have not called the pizza shop in years unless you had a problem with your order, wanted to get a hold of somebody, or there was again some sort of an anomaly. You just don't call the pizza place anymore. You put it through the system, and those tools have become more and more amazing and more impressive. They're even getting to the point you just want the same order that you had last time. I mean, they're good at this. They figured it out. Now, the funny thing is that at the end of it all, your pizza still shows up. It was made the way you expected. Again, the process of getting you there didn't really, the process changed. The way you went about it changed, but the product and what you ultimately got on your doorstep is the same thing it's always been. So when I look at AI and I look at some of the things that are being done, there's some phenomenal tools out there. But again, they're here to ultimately create a result. There's already legislation that exists in multiple states that honestly, it's a little bit challenging to figure out, all right, what's the government about to do for all of us? We all know what that's like when, Uncle Sam shows up, where they're saying, hey, AI can't make a decision around certain people responsibilities. For example, if you're hiring, AI should not automatically disqualify somebody because of the resume. You want to tell me that if you don't ultimately put on a resume, if you put something on there that's negative, that it couldn't be disqualified? Those are the types of things the government's trying to figure out. When I look at AI and I look at operations, I have always looked at it, and I know that where I've worked, it's always been supplemental. It's always been something that you could look at and say, look, if I don't have to invest this over here, I can invest it over here. And I look at this as ultimately very outcome driven. And I look at it as, if you really want the pizza, if I could use AI and get you the pizza faster, better, but just as good, just as hot, maybe even a little less expensive, why wouldn't you want to jump on that? And the answer is you do. So what do I see with AI in the channel? I see all these great solutions. What do I see with AI within, supporting operations? It gives them better access to information. It can accelerate and give basic responses. It could perhaps find ways to improve that transparency I talked about. I think those are all things that every TSD that I talk to is trying to do, improve the transparency. But I also see there's an opportunity sometimes for the TSDs. Maybe it's an opportunity to kind of take your own advice and to go back through and take a look at some of these tools and things that are being used and figure it out. How can I make this work in my organization? I know one particular agent. He's in Tennessee, so if he watches this, he'll, shout out to him. He'll know who he is. He's incorporated AI into almost everything he does. He's improved how it helps him to evaluate contracts. He's used it to help him do all these things. And honestly, it's given him scale and speed that are
Mhm.
phenomenal. The same thing is going to happen within operations, and the same thing is going to happen within supplier in supplier relationships. There is nothing better, at least from what I have seen at this point, then AI is a really great way to get to how to go do things. It's a great way to get to information faster. It is yet to be a great way to make decisions. And so I do believe that the opportunity still still aligns within operations at TSDs and even within agents to again use this to ultimately to improve the experience. But at the end of it all, the pizza is the pizza. Whatever happens behind the scenes and all those things, nobody ultimately cares about. They just cared that they got their pizza as easily as possible and they got it on
Mm.
their doorstep.
Yeah, I love it. That kind of reminds me of an analogy I like a lot, which kind of fits into that, but it fits into so many things, is bottled water. I mean, you go to the convenience store, there's a whole wall of water. Yes, 10 different one's 99 cents, one's 3.99. What's the difference? Well, this one's got a little extra vitamins in it, maybe a little mint flavor or orange flavor, but ultimately they're all water. Some are going to cost a lot more. And of course, that same little bottle, I always laugh when you go to high end hotels where they have the big liter of Avion or Voss, and it's like $8. You're like, this is water, but
Once upon a time, it might have been cool to catch that bottle. I mean, if I'm trying to communicate my status because I can afford an $8 bottle of water, I don't know. But other than that, I'm with you. I don't always see the
it's
purpose.
water. And yeah, there's some mild taste differences, but man, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything we left out, Bryce, that we need to hit on? Anything else you want to talk about as we
Yeah,
wrap up?
I don't want it to turn into a be kind to your TSD, but I'm going to just a little bit. I'm amazed at what the TSDs do to empower agents. And I'm amazed at the agent community and how they work. And again, it's funny because the best relationships I have seen between sales and ops within a TSD are when they are hand in hand. And you can name those types of relationships because they're flawless. They work together. Sales and ops come together and they execute top to bottom. I think the same thing is true of the relationships that how an agent works with the TSD, how the TSD works with the supplier. There are some relationships like that that are flawless, that work really well because the supplier listens to the TSD listens to the supplier, they listen to the agent, they respond accordingly. I've seen some real magic happen as a result of that. And what I would hope is that again, if you're a TSD, continue to do what you can to remove the friction, continue to do what you can to ideally train your people to again understand when the friction shows up what to do about it. If you're on the supplier side, keep investing in these portals, keep investing in agent training, keep investing in finding ways to again remove the friction. Most of the time the problems come, think of it like a relay race. The problems happen when there are handoffs that people weren't ready for. There was some reason to again go and engage another group, another party, whatever it happens to be. If you ensure that the baton got passed, most of the time you're going to do really well in the race. If you drop that baton, everybody stops, everybody picks it back up. So my hope is, look, this channel is amazing. I owe so much of who I am and what my future is and how I take care of my family to an amazing channel and this amazing community. Really, truly grateful to be a part of it. Um, Excited to see where things go because I know that the conversations and the goals are really good. And I'm excited about that. Where you can, my only message would be do your best to be transparent, do your best to communicate. If you get frustrated about ops, why don't you have a conversation? Ops, if you get frustrated with sales, why don't you have a conversation? Guys, if you get frustrated at the supplier, maybe go have a conversation. Most people are open to it.
I love it. Communicate and assume good intent, right? I think that's what you kind of summarize what you said. Just don't always assume someone's out to get you or someone's trying to take advantage of the situation. Fortunately, yes, that
It does
possibly
happen.
be the case. But I think you should also know that no one's okay with that. That's not okay. I mean, I think every organization, where everyone's just trying to do their best because it's good business to do your best. It's
Yeah.
bad business to be unethical or have low integrity. That's not a good thing for business.
This is all emotional. It's emotional for all of us.
Uh,
People want to do a good job. People
People want to do a good job.
I almost never see that again, the failures, they're very rarely purposeful. They're very rarely from bad intent. They are very rarely anything other than a mistake got made someplace. But again, I think Chris, I appreciate what you do and getting this message out. And again, to all of my sales brethren out there and sisterin, you guys are amazing. I think that there is magic that happens. But recognize there's a lot of things that happen behind the curtain and operations. Open the curtain, show people what's up.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think when people know the why behind the why, it makes it a little bit easier to understand that. So I thank you for that. I've learned a lot over the years working with you as a supplier and as a colleague, and I definitely have a huge amount of value that operational relationship because again, I feel like operations normally does a lot of things that I don't think I have the skill set or maybe even the desire to do. I respect that someone has the ability to really dive into all these complex multi-level processes, have the patience to deal with this.
Well, like I said, I'm in Vegas, and I always admire when I come to these conferences the folks that can go and quote unquote manage their relationships at 2 in the morning because I'm dead.
That's right, and have an 8 o'clock meeting and the next morning.
Pretty
That
amazing.
happens. Well, Bryce, thanks so much for making time today. I think we really took a look behind the curtain, if you will, and realized that, yeah, communicate, have transparency, and assume good intent. Thank you for your time. I'm glad you're able to join me.
Great to talk to you, Chris, and to everybody else. Good to see you.
That's right. And there you go, folks. And if you like this episode, or you heard something that made you think of a colleague, or you want to share this, please do. I would really appreciate that. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe. That really helps the algorithms, if you will. And if you have any feedback or ideas for a guest, you can go to thewirelessway.net and hit the contact us button, and come straight to me, and we'll have that conversation. Again, thanks for your time today. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you next time on The Wireless Way.